Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So it's middle of the night, family's sleeping. This is my chance to work on car stuff in the car. So what I'm gonna do today is, on one of my last episodes I was putting that GS350 spare on my car that had got that ugly yellow one, which I think this car comes with an ugly yellow steel one anyways, but I got a yellow aluminum one to fit my big brakes that I put on the car. So what I'm gonna do today, I'm gonna prep that wheel to get some paint. I'm gonna do some base coat, clear coat on that wheel just to make it look decent, even though I don't plan to ever use it. At least it'll look good when I do need to use it. Along with that prep, I'm gonna also, if you saw in my other videos that I did, clear coated the carbon fiber spoilers on my car. The paint on the trunk spoiler came out okay. It came out probably like an 8 out of 10. I mean, there was some little fisheye spots that I need to kind of buff and polish out. That one right there didn't come out as well. There was some scratches before in the resin on the carbon fiber, so it was still showing through. I couldn't get it all the way down, and the resin was so thin on it. So what I'm going to try to do on that one, I'm just going to wet sand it down, kind of get it a smooth layer, and hopefully if I put another layer of clear on it, that it'll smooth out and it'll look a lot better than it does now. So I'm going to prep that, do that, and then I'm going to work on that wheel right here. So now I'm going to take the spare tire out and test this baby out, see if it fits. So the original wheel that came out of here is a 17-inch. This fits most big brakes, the OEM ones like the Supra and the LS430 or the SC430, and these guys that have the SC that don't have a spare, they actually use this as an option. I'm gonna end up trying to sell this on eBay for probably like $100 something to see if there's any takers for that price. But it's a 145/70/17. In here is a 145/70/18, so it's a little bit taller wheel. It fits perfectly in here. The only thing that doesn't fit is that foam piece right there, so I'll just end up taking that foam piece out since I don't really need it, really just to raise that guy up. It wouldn't, this thing would sit properly, but since that cutout is not designed for this wheel, it won't work. So this works perfectly fine, so I'll put everything back together. Ran into another problem after I bolted it down. Looks like this guy used to fit right here on the side when this thing was a little shorter, but now that it's about an inch taller, it doesn't fit. I could probably take it apart and tuck it in here. Still have my original license plate frame that was for the front bumper that I've never put on this car since I'm a Florida car. Original 13-year-old one. Looks like the peeling right there on the thing. I think I'm gonna just tuck it right here. I'll see if it vibrates or anything or makes any noise coming from back here. If it does, then I'll move it, but I think right now it's a good spot right here. Kind of wedges down right there and then up here. But this thing, I guess I could try tucking it inside there, but then I'll lose access to, because I keep my wheel lock inside this thing. So that's another conundrum I'll have to deal with right now. Oh yeah, figured it out. I think it fits right into this slot right here. I want to be able to still access it to get to my key, but this thing, there's a jack tools, a tow hook, you got your 10mm, your 8mm, and a 14, some pliers and some screwdriver. Most people never use this. This thing's never been used for me. Even the lug wrench, maybe I've used that once. But my key's in here, so it's usually on the outside here. Fits perfectly there. One of the things you need to do every so often too is check the PSI in here. It requires 60. I just measured it a little while ago. It was at 40, so I have to fill it up when my air compressor can run. My stock one that's been in there for 13 years has 10 PSI. So good thing I never had to use it. Another pro tip for you guys that run rims on your car, other than making sure your spare tires aired up and has good pressure, you need a set of the OEM lugs, your spare tire. Because remember, when you put rims on your car, you're most likely not using your OEM lugs, so you always need a set of those sitting in the trunk in case you ever have to use your spare. So luckily the aluminum rim, the legs fit right in the hole, so that's where I'm going to store them so I don't forget them or lose them. piece was actually perfect fit back here. It lifted it up and it didn't make it bounce. I discovered this roll, I needed something to kind of raise the center of the wheel up, so I used that duct tape roll, and actually fits perfectly once I use up this duct tape or any other tape roll that I might have. I'm gonna just find a tape roll that fits in here. Once it fits there tight, then when you put this thing down, it doesn't bounce in the center anymore. So that's what I was worried about, is if I would have left nothing supporting the center, that when I put something heavy in here, it was gonna you know, cause this to cave in. But right now it's good because that tape roll, and then we got this foam back here, and then the rest of the corners is actually sitting on the tire, which is fine. So I actually cut those two pieces right here, that one piece into two, so I made it work on the two corners. Just need that roll to fit in the middle now. So if you guys remember my video when I was test fitting this one and trying to get my OEM wheels on the big brakes with the spacers, I had ordered this pretty good deal. It was 120 bucks, which is like half the going price on eBay and on calling all the junkyards, and it was shipped from California for 120 bucks, which shipping on this is $50 or $60, so I got a pretty good deal on it. The only problem with it was that it had some scuffs on it, because the way this wheel is kind of a convex, where the actual face is higher than the tire. So when they were handling it, probably in the junkyard, that fell on its face. So I got some scuff marks here. I got some scuff marks there. I've got a freaking spider there. Don't kill spiders. They're actually pretty good for your garage. They get rid of a lot of bugs, but I'll let that guy go. So anyway, so yeah, so some of these spots right here, well, all scuffed up. So what I'm gonna do is, there is some deep spots. This is a pretty deep spot. I get my fingernail in, and a lot of these other ones, I'm gonna get them as good as possible. I don't have any filler or anything to put in there. Plus it's aluminum. If I put filler in there, it'll probably just fall out. So I'm gonna just get it down, decent smoothness, and then just paint it, right? So it's gonna be in the trunk, under the cover, most of its life, or hopefully all its life. So I'm not worried about that, other than just making it look good, or doing some color on it. What I'm gonna use is, I've got this can of fourth dimension base coat. It's a Honda silver. It's NH583M. So it's basically a Honda Civic, and I've had this thing since probably 2004. I think I bought it in 2004. I used a little bit of it to finish one of my Axis 7s. I had some Axis 7s on my Honda Accord back then, some 19s that used to be bronze. I think I messed up one of them when I had them refinished in silver, but I messed up one of them, and I refinished it in my garage. But I barely used any of it at the time, and it's kind of just been in my paint stash for the last 16 years. So it's still actually good. I mean, it hasn't frozen up. It's still, look at that, it hadn't dried out, so it works. I'm gonna put that in the spray gun, reduce it down with some reducer, and spray that wheel, since I've been trying to find a project for it for the last 16 years, I guess. But anyway, I'll use some of it on this wheel. It won't be anywhere near what's left in this pint. I'll put it to good use. After I'm done with that spraying, I'm going to end up putting the last can of 2K that I have right now on my shelf. I'm not even gonna waste too much 2K. I'm gonna just get a good enough layer on it to get it a shine. I'm more worried about getting this baby to shine and getting rid of those imperfections in that clear. I'm gonna spend most of that can on that trunk or that roof spoiler to get that good. The rest of it, I'm just getting good enough coverage on the 5-spoke. Whatever clear gets between the barrel, we'll go ahead and prep. What I'm doing, I'm gonna hit it with a dry 400 right now, just to get the heavy gouges down. So I got most of the heavy gouges down. It probably took more paint off here than I needed to, but it's good enough. Now what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna take this off. I just dry sanded. I'm gonna take that sandpaper off, wet it up, and probably hit some of this stuff wet, see if I get it a little bit better, like right there with my hand, because the sanding block is getting all the flat surfaces and not the bad gouges. So I got it good enough right here. I'm gonna end up hitting the rest of that wheel with a red Scotch-Brite pad just to get it all scuffed up, and then after that I'm gonna tape up the tire edges and then probably just tape the lug holes. They did tape it when they did powder coat these, so I'm gonna end up just taping those up so I don't get too much paint in there. Tape that valve up, and then it's ready for the paint. Good enough for me. So that was a lot of work. Got it all scuffed up with this red scuff pad, just good enough to stick. I think this red scuff pad is probably the equivalent of what, like a 600 sandpaper, but it makes it fast work, especially since you could just kind of move it around and get all the little edges versus the sandpaper. But yeah, got basically all you do is just scuff it enough to get out all the shine on it, so that the base coat has something to stick to when you lay it down. But that should be good enough. I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna tape it up, but then like all these little bare areas, I'm gonna have to hit with a little bit of etching primer right before I paint. Some of these areas where I got down to the aluminum, the rest of these gray areas are just the primer that they use under this powder coat or whatever they used before. So that's real all, but I got some of them down to the bare metal, so I just hit those with a little bit of etching primer. So I got my little half-ass tape job, just enough to get close enough to the rim. I did get it pretty close. There'll probably be some paint on that tire, but who cares? Hopefully nobody ever sees it, or I have to use it. What I'm gonna do is off camera, I'm gonna just finish this off, probably put some masking paper or newspaper or whatever to cover up the rest of this tire, and just do a better tape job around there just to cover up the whole tire so I don't get too much overspray on it. I'm not even going to do the back side because I don't plan to really paint the back side, because if you look at this, they didn't paint the back side either from the factory. So they've got like a primer coat, that white primer coat or that gray primer coat, which is good enough, and then that yellow that's showing through is just the overspray from the top. So I'm going to do the same way. I'm going to call it a night. We'll move on to the next step tomorrow and then do the painting and everything. We got the tire out here, just hit it with some self-etching primer, just some Rust-Oleum stuff from Walmart, just those edges that were showing a little bit of bare metal. Went down, not that great. I was at the bottom of the can, had to kind of flip it upside down to get any out, but it's just primer, so I'll let it dry for a couple hours, and any high spots I'll just sand down before I base coat it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna block sand this. I'm using some 800 right now. Usually you don't want to go any higher than 800. You go 600 depending on how bad or how rough the clear came out, but I'm gonna wet sand with an 800. I'm just gonna do it with the 800, kind of smooth it all out before I clean it up and prep it for the new coat of clear. Yeah, over here I've got some dry edges that I gotta take out. So the dry edge is when you spray it and you don't get it on thick enough, and it's kind of like an overspray edge where it dries before it hits the clear. So usually you could just wet sand that down and buff it and it'll be shiny again, especially if your piece is already 100%. So that was my first layer of sanding. You could tell where there's haze and where there's no haze in the reflection. That's where the block sand got to it and it didn't get to it. This thing, the resin's pretty thin on here, so it's, yeah, you can see it's not as even. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have to do it again, kind of concentrate on those areas that it didn't get coverage or the sandpaper didn't hit too well, like these low spots. Kind of get it all smooth. You could see where those strange lines were from the thin resin. So I'm gonna try to get those kind of smoothed out, so that way when I spray the next coat on, that it fills those in a little bit better, and it gets a little bit more coverage there and evens out. So after that second pass, I was able to get a little bit more coverage on those spots, so you could tell now all those little streaks are the low spots on here, and then the high spots are the ones that are scuffed up already. So I might go over it right now with a little hand sanding on there without the block, kind of get those low spots, and then that should be good enough to kind of smooth it out and get it ready for another coat of clear. Alright, so I let that second or third pass kind of dry up a little bit more. So now you can see much better on how scuffed it is. If you look really close in those, so those little low spots there. So what I'm going to do is all the spots that I didn't really scuff up before I paint the next clear coat on here, I'm going to hit it with a gray Scotch-Brite pad just to get all those kind of scuffed up so they can have something to adhere to. Some of these little low spots here, I'm going to try to get in there just to get it scuffed up with that pad. Clean everything off with some reducer or lacquer thinner, and then get it all ready and cleaned up for the next coat. And when I put that on, I'm gonna just put one thick wet coat on here, and that's probably it. That's probably all I need on here, and it should be good. And I'll save the rest of that 2K for the wheel. So overall, it came out pretty good for a quick spray job with some 15-year-old paint or 16-year-old paint or however old it was. You saw on the video I kind of sprung a little leak on my paint gun where I was screwing a can on, and it spilled a bunch of paint right here. I tried to, instead of starting over or waiting for it to dry and sanding it, I just screwed it and laid it on thicker to try to blend it in, but you can still see it since it's metallic in there, and then over here a couple little spots. But overall the rest of it came out pretty good. There was another spot right here, it's kind of high on that, but that was that scuff right there. Everything else came out good. I laid on one good coat of urethane clear, so the faces are all nice and shiny and pretty good coverage on there. The center is pretty good coverage. Most of these got decent coverage around the rim. It didn't get the horizontal surfaces as well, so it's a little bit rough there, but it's acceptable. Inside here it got a little overspray, but it's good enough for a spare tire. Hopefully I never use it and it stays in the trunk for the rest of its life. I'm gonna just clean up the tire, make sure the pressure is good, put some tire wet on it, and put it back in the trunk. As far as the spoiler goes, that thing came out good too. It's a good, I think I put like 2 layers on there of clear. I need to wet sand and buff it before I get it back on the car, and that should finish up this project. Hey guys, really appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end of the video. If you like this video or any of my videos, don't forget to subscribe to your channel if you haven't done so already, and like the videos if you found them interesting and useful. And don't forget, I'm still giving away those VLAN headlights in that one video that I did a while back. Check out that video if you haven't seen it. I'll have a link to it at the end of this video. Once we hit the metrics on that and get the subscribers and the viewers and the likes and all that on that video, I'll go ahead and give those headlights away, so don't forget to check that out. So I'll see you guys next time.